All right, we're going to try and unwrinkle getting DAZ Studio on Linux today. I'm going to show how to get both 4.x and the new beta or 6.x working on Linux. Caveat being the beta version has some nasty viewport lag issues on some machines, including mine. The silver lining to that is that's coming from Windows users too, so hopefully DAZ will get that fixed by the time it's finally released, but it feels more like an alpha, to be honest, at this point. So having said that, for Linux, the way to get around the case insensitive problem, which is really the biggest hurdle here, is going to be at the partition levels.
Pardon me?
The caveat is it's going to need to be an ext4 partition, because that's the one that has the case fold option, which is what's going to enable this. So I've already done it on mine, and I'll end up showing where that is. But I want to show the process of doing the partition on a USB drive that I've plugged into my PC, just to make that easier for both of us. So lsblk is the command which will show you all the connected devices. The -p will show you this DEV prefix. So this is the USB drive that I have plugged in, dev SDB. Almost forgotten. The reason I have this up here is this E2FS progs. Most distributions will already have that, but this has the tools we'll need. Just to preface this, I'm going to go through this step by step, but I'm going to keep it pretty high level, just so the process can be completed as painlessly as possible, and I'm going to add some technical details and stuff at the end. That's not me being a scumbag trying to get you to watch the video. I just want to make the installation process as smooth as possible. So having said that, now we've got this USB drive. In order to partition it, we just need to use the make file system command, mkfs.ext4, which is the partition type, and this is the important part, the -o, which is option, case fold. And then we're just going to put in that USB drive in my case, but in your case it'll be whatever drive you're doing this for. So it's just asking me to confirm because I do already have a partition there, but yes, I do. Okay, so that's done. Now, in order to confirm that it has the feature, we use tune2fs, which is part of that package I mentioned. So here we're listing, this is the device, SDB, and then this pipe will, pipe the output to this command. grep just gets, it's like a string search. As you can see, I've done this before. And unfortunately, it got cut off here. But here's the important one right here, case fold. That confirms that the partition has the feature, and you do need that. So what I'm going to do now is mount that partition. I have this mount temp folder here. I'm mounting it just to show testing a folder in here. And here I'm going to mount that partition to mount temp, like so. And now that folder here represents that partition on the USB. This is one of those things I'll go into a little more detail at the end if anyone's having trouble with it. So I'm going to change the directory there. So here we've got nothing in here, right? So first we just need a folder. I'm going to use sudo because it's in the operating system folders here, so that way I don't have to change the permissions just for a demo. So here you can see that folder was created. Hooray. Now, key point here is just because you made the partition have the case fold option, it does not mean that that's automatically the way it is for the whole partition. You set that at the folder level. So I'm going to set that option on this folder. Command for that is basically change attribute here, chatter. Put +F and then the folder without a typo. There we go. So now this folder and everything on it should have that case fold attribute. So let's test that. Now we're going to make another directory here. We're going to call it test. I'm going to just put lowercase because why not? So there you see that appeared here. Now we're going to do this again, except we're going to make it all capital. There we go. This is what proves it's there. We cannot create the directory because it already exists, because it's considered equivalent as the lowercase. So great. So do that to whatever partition you're going to put this stuff on, and I'm going to show how to install it, and you'll set a folder appropriately, of course. So like before, we're going to use Lutris. Install Lutris and Wine if you have not already. I'm just filtering this for DAZ so it keeps it nice and clean for the demo here. Just so you're aware, if you want to change your default Wine environment in Lutris, you can go to Preferences, Runners, and then Wine. So in my case, Wine Staging is it, but you can put in whatever you've got installed if you have better luck with one or another, but usually that won't matter for DAZ. So you're going to want to download the DAZ Install Manager. You just go to this web page and just click download. That's pretty simple. And we're going to install via their installer. So here we're going to go to Add Game, install a Windows game from an executable. You just call this DAZ, whatever you want. Shouldn't need to change anything here. Windows 10 is usually better. So here, Lutris is a little counterintuitive as usual. So it says setup file, but what you're really picking here is the folder that you're going to install the wine prefix to. I wish Lutris would fix that. Anyway, so I'm just going to call it DAZ prefix, so, you know, for wine prefix. So I actually need to be careful here because I didn't change my Lutris default install folder. I actually need to change that to this because that's my other drive with the casefold enabled partition. So I'm just calling it DAZ prefix. That's the wine prefix folder. And this is where you'll want to decide for yourself how you want to set up the case insensitive folder. If you want it to just apply to this prefix, obviously you can do that change attribute command on DAZ prefix. I did it on my entire Lutris folder because the majority of what I put in here is wine anyway. I figured it can't hurt. So hit continue. Now we're going to actually select the setup file. And this is where I have that installer. That's the file that was downloaded. It'll bring up the wine configuration, whatever. And this pops up on my other monitor as always, typical install process. And I usually uncheck Launch Install Manager and click Finish. So I don't know if this is something DAZ Install Manager changed or if it's a Lutris bug, but it finishes and just doesn't finish. So here I'm just going to abort this and I'm not going to remove them because I know it finished and I'm just going to add it manually. So here's what, this is a good way to show how to do that. So what we're going to do now is add a locally installed game because we just installed it. Call it the same thing, and we're going to select wine as the runner. The wine prefix is going to be that same folder, and then we just need to pick the executable. Now this is the installer because that's what we've installed. So I'm just going to save myself some time and copy that prefix, then go up to here, paste that in there, and you can see drive C. That's the wine environments drive C, of course. And then in program files, DAZ3D, here is the install manager executable. So I'm going to click that. Then I'm going to copy and paste that everything but the exe to the working directory. So that's all set. That's really all you have to do. This is good to show how to do this in Lutris in general. So I click save, and I'm going to actually rename that to DAZ install manager. All right, hopefully that'll be fixed sometime soon. So now let's run that. And I'll bring this over here. This is, of course, what it does. I'll fill my info in. Okay, and once you've put your account information in, it comes up with this, prepared to install basically what's the current version, which is 4.24 or 4.x. I'm going to cancel that. Now, like I said in the other video, I like to change the install folder just because it's nested in a bunch of garbage and it just makes it more confusing. So I'm going to go to Basic Settings. Select the base directory to whatever I want. I'm just going to put the C drive. I don't even really want applications here, but it automatically fills a lot of that in. But this just keeps me in as few garbage subdirectories as possible. Click accept. And now it's going to come up and it's going to install to those folders. Okay, now that's installed. We're going to install the beta version, the 2026 version, right alongside that in the same wine environment. Now, in order to see that download for now, while it's still in beta, we need to go back over here to download filters, come on down here and check public build, accept, and the install manager is kind of stupid, so it does not like refresh this immediately. So I'll go up here and click refresh, and it will not work. Close install manager, turn it off and turn it back on again, and when you log back in, everything is magically here. We can just filter it, whatever makes it easy here. So here you see DAZ Studio 2026 public beta. That's what we want, or more accurately, we'll eventually be obligated to. We're going to click download. Okay, and now it's been installed. So that's both of them have now been installed to the same wine environment, same as the install manager, of course. So I'm going to close this. And now, so we have shortcuts to both of the DAZ Studio versions. I'm going to duplicate this Lutris prefix twice. One, I'm going to just say DAZ 4x, and duplicate again, and 6x. So now we just need to point to the executables for each. So I'm going to go into 4x and configure that. And here, instead of pointing to the install manager, we need to change that, of course. So I'm going to go back to drive C, and remember I pointed everything to this applications folder to minimize the subdirectory mess, 64-bit, and here's DAZ Studio 4, so this is the 4x. We're going to go right there, DAZ Studio, and same idea here. I'm just going to copy and paste the working directory to make that simple. Save, we're done. And then we need to do the same thing for the 6X. So you probably noticed when I went into the 4X, under applications 64-bit, you've got DAZ Studio 6 public build here as well. So obviously that is where the beta version is. So we see DAZ Studio here, that's the executable. First I want to take note of this folder up at the top here. I'm actually going to copy it, you'll see why in a moment. So after I've copied that path, I'm going to go select the executable here. So in my file browser, I'm just going to go right to that folder. I'm going to keep that open just to save myself a step here. But similarly, I'm going to grab this and make that the working directory for this. And we're all set there. Now the reason I saved this path, just so I don't have to like click through the directories, this is where that public beta is installed. Now there's one extra step. We need to have the newer version of DAZ Studio work, which is a missing DLL file. And that is icuuc.dll, which is this thing right here. I've already downloaded it. You can download it from this site right here. I'll put that link in the description. When you go here or wherever you get it, just don't be fooled by imitations. Watch, these first ones are 32-bit. You just want the larger 64-bit one here. You would click download and that'll get you the zip, but that's what I already have. So I'm just going to close that, get that out of the way. This is coming up next. So I believe all you need to do here is have the DLL in the working directory, and I think you can put it in the Windows like syswow64 directory if you want, but this is just straightforward. I'm going to drop it right in here. If you don't do that, it causes a whole bunch of cascade DLL errors looking for all of these DLLs. It's just not going to work. So this next step is for Nvidia cards only, so you can skip this part if you don't have a Nvidia card. This is to get the Nvidia drivers working so that it'll pick up your Nvidia graphics card and actually like render the iRay with the graphics card and everything. So this is like my second DAZ video. This is the same thing. We're going to go through it here once. Go to the latest release, obviously, if there's a newer version than this now, but I'm just going to grab the Nvidia libraries. I just get the vanilla one here. I've already done that though and extracted it, so I'm just going to go right to the extracted folder right here. So I'm going to open a terminal here, and then we follow the instructions on the actual Git page. So we go right here if you're already at the releases page. Go right down here to how to install, and I'm going to need the path to the wine prefix, and that is this part of the path right up here. Then we just need to follow these instructions. So just wine prefix equals, and then you just paste or shift insert depending on your terminal, like so. And then like it says right here, just point to its setup file and then install or uninstall whatever you're doing. You might see this wine configuration come up, but it's going to just do its magic here. And that's it. So if you don't do this and you have a Nvidia card, chances are it will not pick up the card correctly and you'll be doing CPU rendering, which fine, but if you don't have to, don't. So I'm going to go with the good old 4.x first. We're going to start that. And it always opens on my other monitor, but I can tell you this is showing a new potential content directory has been detected. So the reason this happens is because DAZ is stupid. When I first changed the installation folder to this one under applications instead of that public profile garbage, it added the default DAZ 3D library folder under that directory, but it still creates the folders under the original directory, which is annoying. We'll fix that. But that's why this comes up. So I'm just going to hit yes, because that's ultimately where I want it to be. And here we have it opening, and this pops up, whatever. Then this will pop up. You do what you want here. I don't need that, so I'm just going to click next, and then you can hit don't show this if you don't want this dumb screen to come up every time. So the first thing to mention is the render settings, which are typically right here and under hardware. So this is where we see, okay, it picked up the graphics card here, and that's what would not happen without a Nvidia library step. I typically like to put the CPU limit down to like 1 under your max, because if you're using the CPU, DAZ Studio tends to use it even when it's idle, if it's an iRay or something like that. And maybe that's been fixed, but just know that that's here. You can also choose to disallow the CPU fallback. That's another way to prevent it. You really shouldn't need that, but it's a janky piece of software, so you may. So just know that's there. In my experience, the mouse wheel tends to be inverted, so we're going to go to Workspace and Customize, come over here, and down here, invert mouse wheel. You know, if for whatever reason that works out of the box on your machine, don't worry about that. And that's all there is to that. We should be set up to go. So I'm going to close 4.x, and now I'm going to open 6.x, so that should work now that we've got the DLL file in there. And it's the same wine environment, so it should also pick up the Nvidia drivers. Again, splash screen on the wrong screen. It does the same thing here. What a surprise, they haven't fixed that. And here they personalize your installation by taking your data. So don't show it again. Thank you very much. Don't show it again. Go away. There we go. So we're going to do the same thing just to make sure it's all the same. Same thing happened here. You do what you want here. There we go. So now 2026 is set up. So before we dig into the terrible performance of this application, I'm going to mention setting up the folders for your libraries. So what I have here is under Lutris. Like I said, I set up the case insensitivity on the Lutris folder itself. I recommend separating your assets out like this. That way it's not tied to your actual installation or your wine prefix. So this is like literally my library. So I'm going to pull this tab out here. I'm going to start with just the vanilla 4.x version here. And cautionary note here, I'm setting this up for demo purposes. I'm not really intending to use the beta until it's out of beta. But if you do it the same way I'm doing it, you'll notice this applications folder, it has one data directory even though it's got, you know, 2 installation folders. So the point being is that both of these versions will have access to your same library if you do it this way. So you might want to split that out if you actually want to try playing with that and, you know, have backups of your assets. But the idea here is to show that you can, you know, have this separate and not have a bunch of redundancy. So here we see the My DAZ 3D library. So when that prompt came up when we first started DAZ Studio and asked if you wanted to add this new potential content directory, that's what it was. So I actually don't want that folder because I want it to be pointing to what I already had, like before I, you know, redid this installation. So I'm going to delete this. That would just be what was installed by default. But this stuff is going to include that in whatever I had added in here. So I just need to symlink all of the folders I want in there to the files on my actual Linux folder. And again, because this Lutris folder is case insensitive, this should all be fine with DAZ. I'm going to click link here and it will pull all of those over. Depending on your desktop, you may have to do that a little differently, but that's how that works for me. So let's start DAZ 4.x up again. So the reason I'm doing this is just to show that annoying library issue. So here you see 2 My DAZ 3D libraries, and this is again because it creates these in that default folder before I change the path. So I'm just going to delete these. There's nothing of substance in them anyway, so I'm just going to hit remove. And then you can add any of the libraries that you want. So if just to show that, I'm going to add a base directory. I just go back to C so I'm not confused and go in here through applications again. So in that same folder, so these are the symlinked folders. So this is what the wine environment sees, but because of the symlink, it's actually pointing to the case insensitive folder on my Linux installation. So I'm going to put my library in here, for example, and then there you go. All's well. So let's load a figure just to prove the concept. So I'm going to leave this on wire bounding box and then load the figure after doing that so I can zoom in on the face and test iRay out, just because even though it's just a mannequin, I mean, you know, lately YouTube's AI moderation has had a stick shoved so far.
Sensors.
I wouldn't want to offend any sensibilities. So let's zoom in on the face and then go to iRay. Great. Okay, so and then we can see it's refreshing at a reasonable speed here thanks to the GPU usage. One other thing I want to mention is that this is working now, the highlight, even though I now am using Wayland instead of X11. So that is something I noticed, I think just happened to be fixed by DAZ updating from 4.22 to 4.23 or 4. Not going to complain. Let's take a look at the same thing in the newer version. So open it up here. I'm going to do the same thing with the folders. Okay, so same thing. I'll put it on bounding box. Hooray. Okay, we're loaded. So now I've selected iRay, and we can see the performance improvements that have been... yeah, so this is like where it can't seem to even keep up with my mouse hover, which is kind of pathetic. And again, I wouldn't blame them because they don't explicitly support Linux, but I think, like I said, this has been reported. Hopefully they'll fix it. But the point here is just to show, like, we can get the modern version running. So, you know, if they update and you didn't already have the previous version, we can get it running in Linux. And again, hopefully they will fix this because this is quite poor. Get it out of here before I crash or something. And and it may be a combination of DAZ and Nvidia not having good driver support too, because that is also totally a thing.
Wait for it.
Anyway, let's close this. So our last step is Diffeomorphic. Now, as shown in the previous video, if you don't know what Diffeomorphic is and you do know what DAZ is, you are in for a treat, in my opinion, if you're trying to get assets out into Blender. It absolutely buries DAZ's terrible bridges. So this is the website for it, and you can click right here to get the link to it. It's just a zip file, which is a Blender add-on. So in Blender, this has been updated to an extension, not just the legacy add-on format. So you go in here and you can see I've already got it installed here, but I'm just going to uninstall it just so you see the install process. You go up to this arrow here, and I'm on 5.1, so this may vary if you're on an older version. But just click install from disk, and in my case, Diffeomorphic, I have it here. This is the zip file. I keep up with the repo, but it would be just the same. So that's in there. One thing that's a little sneaky is now that it's an extension, in order to enable or disable some of the features of Diffeomorphic, you actually go to the add-ons tab and then click DAZ importer here. That will show up after you've installed it as an extension. So I'm just going to check most of this. I don't care about export, but yeah, so if you find menus missing, that's just so you don't get overwhelmed with all the selections. So that's that. When you install that add-on, you have DAZ setup and DAZ runtime. So under setup, you'll have these global settings. Now the important thing here is those content directories we were just looking at. I've already got them set up, but here you want to put in anything that you want Blender to see, or Diffeomorphic specifically to see in your library, because when you export stuff from DAZ Studio, it's going to reference files in these folders. And this is of course the Linux path. Now you'll notice here I don't have my wine prefix as part of this. Just as a reminder, that's because the wine prefix is symlinking to here. You can delete your wine prefix later, reinstall DAZ if it gets janky or doesn't update properly, and still have everything intact so you don't have to redo all of that. Now one thing that may not be so clear is when you're installing Diffeomorphic, it's easy to install into Blender, but in that zip file you will see this DAZ Studio scripts down here. You do need to put that into a folder that DAZ Studio can see, and that adds the export tools for Diffeomorphic in there. And again, I've already done that, but I will show how to do that. So similarly, I'm going to do that in the folders that are linked to here. So in my library, I have scripts, and you can see I've already got Diffeomorphic, but all you really need to do is from whatever library you're in, grab that, just drag that in there, and that would do it. So because that's there, I can show exporting out of DAZ Studio here. Something that might be confusing for some folks if they've seen the older versions of Diffeomorphic is before it was important under utilities to click scan absolute paths. You'll notice that is not here anymore. So Thomas made an update to the add-on some months ago, realizing there was a better way to do that. So you don't really need to do that anymore. It should be fine without doing that. But that's why we don't need to do that. It was an improvement to Diffeomorphic. So setting that aside, we're going to go into DAZ Studio again. And we're going to go to an environment again. That way I keep with YouTube's Victorian nature. Have this cool feudal Japanese house. Good. Okay. So there's the house. Cool. Can have a quick look at it in iRay for fun. Awesome. So anyway, we've got something to export now. So what we need to do to enable the menus for the first time, you only need to do this once, is go into, you'll see scripts here appearing thanks to that. And all you have to do is double click setup menus. That's it. You can directly click export to Blender here if you'd rather do that, that's fine. Save root paths will save those content directory paths, but you're not going to use that with the Linux setup because again, this is only going to see the wine environment, the C drive, so this would actually be incorrect. That is why you need to set up these paths manually, but it's a pretty simple thing to do. So I think this needs to be saved as a scene actually, so we're going to do that. And you got to be careful here because this is also in those default folders, even though you changed the installation path. So I'm going to get right out of here. See if you go up, it's in this documents folder. Yeah, anyway. So if you want to keep it in the folder that Diffeomorphic is seeing, well, you could point it to a different one, obviously, but you can go in here and put it where you want to. And you can add these base directories too. So I'm just going to put files I'm going to put it in my actual folders so that way I'll keep it separate because I'm just intending this for a demo. Save it. This is the typical DAZ menu. Save it. Just to make sure that's stuck, I'm going to hit export to Blender again. Since it's now saved as a scene file, I think you do need to do that. Now we're going to go into Blender and get that. So we're going to go to Easy Import DAZ. And up here, I'm going to pick one of these that's meant for environments. I tend to like the one that will keep the meshes separate wherever it makes sense to. All right, found the dumb thing. So here's the house. You can pick any of the files. As long as the DBZ file exists here, it will automatically find that for you. Just click Easy Import. I have the terminal open so you can actually see it do some of this process. There we go. So let's have a look in the textured mode. Cool. And by the way, if you're going back and forth between DAZ Studio and Blender, make sure you don't have this in iRay because it'll eat up all your VRAM when you will want it in Blender. So it's good not to have them both trying to render at the same time unless you've got like an AI-sized graphics card. We can go to render just to see, hey, that looks cool. It's got its own lighting apparently. Just for fun, I really like this physical starlight atmosphere plugin. Cool. All right, so there you have it. So now I just want to go over a few of the minutia of this in a little more detail. Like if you got what you needed, then you can be done with this right here. But I want to explain first why the tool I made in the previous video doesn't always work. So here I've created a folder just right in the drive itself, and this is just to get out of the case insensitive path because that's where that previous tool would have applied. So I'm going to say folder, and then let's do this, right? So folder. So there we go, 2 folders, right? And so this folder is not case insensitive, so this is what you have. But the previous tool was designed to fix this. And so what it would have, so one of the things it would look for, if you had nested stuff like this, it would try to combine those together. And if you had previously pulled assets in, you might get nested stuff like this. And this is a problem. Like this probably should have been the top level folder. So one of the things the tool would do is it would go through and try to fix this, and it would succeed, right? So it would actually pull the contents of this folder up into this folder so they were all the same. Here's the problem. Some artists actually create folders like this. I don't know if you want to say deliberately, but they do it. So the actual path to some assets ends up actually being something like this, where the same name folder is nested inside itself. And that really kills the easy way to determine if that's the way it should be. I think it is possible to create something that actually looks at the actual files, like the more files, everything the asset has, and then set the folder paths according to those files. But given that we can do this with the partition and just set it and forget it, we don't need to do that. We're not that sick. So another thing I want to touch on is the mount bit. So typically in Linux, you'll have the MNT for mount, and that'll be a typical place where drives get mounted and stuff. If you're setting up a secondary drive, you will probably want a permanent mount point. Like that USB drive I mounted, it just would mount to probably some hash directory or whatever it is. You saw me mount the USB to here. If it's your secondary drive, like in my case, this one right here, in order for that to be there consistently, like every time you boot, you want to set that up to mount that on boot. So to do that, we need to edit this file. So you can see here, right here is where I added a line according to the unique identifier for the device. So here you're putting the mount point, the partition type, and these probably don't matter too much, but this is just what I put in there. So in order to see that, all we need to do is do this same command and add the F parameter here, and then you'll get the UUID as well. So you can see right here, there's the UUID. So that's how you would know what to put in to this file here. Now, one thing I want to say be careful of, if you make a mistake when you're putting something in here and the device doesn't get recognized for whatever reason, it can keep Linux from booting. Now all you have to do if that happens is you just make sure you remember this command, because you can go into recovery mode and then fix that so your system will boot again. Now let's say that happened. This is what you do. You just boot into recovery mode. It'll give you a command prompt, and if you're not used to Linux, you'll be like, what the hell do I do now? I don't know what these stupid commands are. Write this one down, and then you can edit this back to the way it was before you did that. And you don't have to memorize that either. All you do is use this, like same as Python, comment it out with the octothorpe there, and hit Control S and save it, and then Control X, I believe, or C to get out of there. I think it's Control X. Yeah. So, and then save. In my case, I'm going to hit N because I don't want to save that, but you would save that and then reboot your system, and then you can go back in and troubleshoot it and make sure you got it correct in there. Last thing I want to do is give credit where it's due. So actually this person right here, actually shortly after I posted my last video about this, this is where I found out about the case fold stuff. And the other bit about the DLL for that's necessary for the newer version right here, credit where it's due. Very helpful post, but this is just an effort to get it all wrapped up into one package.